What do you do when the people around you are communicating in ways that don't align with your values, but you're not trying to correct them? You're not trying to confront, you're not trying to give feedback. You just want to show up as yourself, clear, calm, and confident. But instead, you find yourself holding back, overthinking what to say, or walking away feeling slightly off. In today's episode, we're talking about how to communicate in a way that stays aligned with your values, even when no one else changes. If you've ever left a conversation thinking that wasn't really me, adjusted your communication to match the tone around you, or wanted to be more genuine but didn't know how, this episode is for you. Because here's the shift: this isn't about managing other people, it's about managing your alignment.
Welcome to Communication Skills for Working Women. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Rose May. Do you find yourself second guessing or avoiding conversations because you're worried about being misunderstood?
You're not alone. On this show, we're sharing tangible tools for assertiveness, emotional resilience, and real life communication wins and fails.
Let's sharpen our communication together. So, before we dive in, if you've ever struggled to feel confident, grounded, and authentic in your communication, just know you are not alone. Follow us on Facebook at Communication Skills for Working Women. You can share this episode with someone who values personal growth. And if you're loving the show, please leave a review. It helps more women find us. Because you don't need to become louder or more forceful. You just need to become more aligned with yourself.
Yeah, so Rose, you have a story to tell us today.
I do.
All
I have
right.
two stories. I have two,
Okay.
but they're in the same vein. So, I have a story that I was given permission to share, and it is around a nurse that I know. She was in her department working one day, and there was a training, and part of the training is that they need to present on a case, which is very common in trainings and presentations. But they had to present on a case, and this person that I know was sitting in this presentation as another nurse was presenting about a client and made some really racist remarks about the client. So this is a nurse talking, a patient, sorry. This is a nurse talking about her patient and talking about how she wants to treat, how she went about treating the patient, meaning like medically treat. But it was enveloped, and a lot of her treatment was based on some really racist and stereotyped beliefs. And so this nurse that I know was sitting in that presentation like, what is happening right now? Also, I mean, the research is filled with evidence of, racial disparities in healthcare, but she's sitting there thinking this is insane. Now, just for context, they're both white women. And she's trying to figure out how to respond. Luckily, the training supervisor, whoever it was, the supervisor responded very quickly during that situation and made statements about their ethical responsibility, right, to treat everyone equally. But she was telling me this story, and she's like, I don't know what to do with this now because now I'm weird around this person.
Yeah.
She's like, it was so incredibly misaligned with my values and the values of the nursing profession and the healthcare profession in general. And I don't know what to do about this. And so we're having a chat about that. And I realized the same thing happened to me. I was in a situation once where a colleague made some remarks that indicated that they were very much aligned with a political figure who was very racist. And I'm not talking. This is it's like current but not current. Um, and I remember feeling the same way. Like, again, we're in the healthcare profession. How is this possible? Is kind
Right.
of what I was thinking to my mind. And also, like, I'm not going to change anyone's personal opinions about anything. I can say what I want to say, but is that really going to make a difference? I just, specifically for me, I have been struggling to find a way to show up in a way that is aligned with my values without trying to change someone, because I recognize I can't change anyone. And I think that this is what this nurse was trying to do too. I mean, you be the best person that you can be, but I mean, you're not going to change anybody's views or
Right.
opinions on things. And so, Yeah, it was really interesting because I realized that I was a bit more quiet than I
Mm.
normally would be, but I think it was because I was like trying to figure out like how do I even respond to this?
Right.
But I'm not trying to correct you because you're going to do what you're going to do.
Right.
I can't change the environment,
Yeah.
right? But I did start to notice that like even like being a little bit more silent or oh man, this is a really sticky situation because like being more there's a measure of self-preservation, there's a measure
Hmm.
of not wanting to be vulnerable around this person because I don't know what to trust
Right.
in this situation. So,
Right.
but I'm also not feeling really aligned with how I'm showing up, and that's kind of where I feel like I was struggling because I'm not, again, not trying to change anyone. I just wanted to know, like, how do I show up in a way that is aligned with what's important for me and what my values are, regardless of what they're thinking, doing. And also, I'm like, but my ethical responsibility as a
Right.
therapist is to XYZ, right? So complicated.
Right. This is a difficult scenario. This isn't just like okay, let's talk about our communication goal and then, oh, let's set it up. Because you talked about ethical responsibilities, misalignment with your own values, having to work closely with someone. When situations like this happen, where someone shows up so incredibly like in a different place than I would be or that I am, it's like it's disruptive to your soul.
Totally.
And so there's many, many things going on in this. So I really want to go through the communication framework with you. Okay, so in this situation, we're going to talk about your situation. What was your communication goal? Because it sounds like this is something that maybe happened like not in a meeting, not
No,
in a formal event, but it happened with a coworker. And so like you didn't have like it wasn't a predetermined, okay, in this meeting I want to
no.
accomplish this thing.
It was very random. It was a random situation where like others were present and we just all happened to be like in the same spot of the office at the same time.
Mm,
So it wasn't, yeah, it wasn't planned. And I think that I definitely wanted to communicate in a way that reflected my values, but also the values of the profession. And this
mm,
is where it gets tricky because and it depends on who you talk to. Everyone has their own set of values. As a
yeah.
profession, we have a set of values also. And when your personal values are contrary to your professional values, I don't know how to reconcile that because my personal values are aligned with my professional values. So I actually don't know how that works for other people, but I could tell like her personal values just by those couple of statements that she was making, her personal values in some ways are misaligned. So I think I wanted to find a way to communicate in a way that reflected my values and the
Mm.
profession's values. And, but I also wanted to sound like myself. I didn't want to censor myself. I also didn't want to attack someone. So
Right.
I guess I wanted to communicate in a way that reflected my values, and I wanted to feel like myself when I was speaking. Yes.
So you are very clear though with your professional values, like with the values of your profession.
Yes.
Even though this wasn't in a meeting where you had something specific, you have these values that you know you're showing up for every single day. So
Oh, absolutely.
you wanted to communicate those.
Yeah.
A thought that I had that we don't have the answer to, a question I had that we don't have the answer to is, does she think her values are misaligned?
Bro, I don't know. I
Right?
don't know because I look at them and I'm like, those are opposite ends of the spectrum in some
Right?
ways. That's a really good question. I'm not about to ask that. We're not close enough. I can't even figure out how to talk to you. I'm not about to ask you that. I don't know how to act around you still. Yeah. Anyways, I
Okay,
don't
well, maybe by the end of this, we'll have some clarity on how you can act around her and feel
know.
a little
Yeah.
more comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll see. Okay, so what were you doing or not doing to support this goal of showing up ethically in your workplace? In alignment with your workplace ethics that are very clear.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't like an arbitrary ethical scenario you come up with. Like, within the mental health world, there's very clear guidelines.
Yeah, so for sure I was editing myself in real time. And I do that anyway because I know every thought that comes to my mind is probably not appropriate for a professional setting. So I do that anyway. But I definitely was also prioritizing comfort of people around me over clarity, and prioritizing like my own comfort in the moment. And just for a little bit more context, like something had happened like socially, like in our environment and in our area, and these comments were in response to what happened. And so everyone, like organizationally and just socially, everyone is kind of like tense and feeling unsafe, like physically unsafe anyway. And so, yeah, I was definitely prioritizing the comfort over clarity in that moment. And I was letting the environment set my tone. So, and probably none of that looks externally wrong. I don't think that's externally wrong by any means. But internally, I definitely felt, I don't know if anyone's seen that gif with the little girl who's like sitting in her car seat. She's like blonde and her hair's all crazy, and she's like got that face like what? That's how I felt in that
Mm.
moment. Was just like something is out of whack here, but also this is a very intense kind of setting already. So yeah.
This, when you were describing this, like that this was a social event that happened or something that happened in your area and impacted you, it made me think of, it actually made my stomach drop. It made me think of a time when um something happened here in the DC area and something happened to one of the senators, and I made this offhanded comment about it because I didn't know who it was. I knew nothing about it except that there had been this really horrible event, and I made this comment about it, and then I saw the look on my friend's face when I made the comment, and I was like,
Oh,
just shut up, Elizabeth. Like, you don't know what you're saying. And then later I came to learn that like they had a personal relationship with this person. They'd worked on the Hill with them. They'd been working, actually like actively working on some legislation. And I was like, oh my gosh, why was I even speaking? Why was I
mm-hmm.
even speaking? I had no clarity around that. And it just sometimes when we go through this communication framework, my stomach drops of just times that I'm like, man, we sometimes really suck for one another, and we
Yeah,
can give each other grace and figure it out. But
that's true.
all right, number three, what were the worries that revealed the hidden commitments?
Um, okay, so I know for sure I was worried about like making a tense environment even more tense, right? So like
Yeah,
I'm exacerbating the discomfort that already exists. So I know that was definitely I didn't want to do that. That was I was committed to like not doing that in that moment. Which again, like this is tricky because I think that in some ways is valid. Anyways,
right.
um I think I also, yeah, that's probably the biggest hidden commitment actually, was like I don't want to, I'm committed to like not making things worse right now
Hmm.
because clearly this is impacting our community. And
Right.
yeah, that.
I mean, and that I think that aligns with your values to some
Yeah,
degree,
yeah,
right? Like your personal values to some degree. And so sometimes we think our values all align with each other, and then we're thrown in these situations where we're like, wait, like I want to help people understand our ethical responsibility as therapists. And then also I have these values of like keeping life moving
yeah.
and
Oh, for sure.
functioning.
Yeah,
And so it can, I guess I'm just pointing that out to say it can get tricky even when we're trying to act in alignment with what we view as most important at that time.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, all right. So, what assumptions were you making?
The assumptions that I were making, like the assumptions that I was making. One of them was for sure, this isn't the space for me to communicate something differently.
Yeah.
Which, now that I look back on it, I'm like, probably could have and it would have been fine.
Yeah.
Or even just like it's better to adjust to the current situation than to actually speak in a way that is authentic. The And I know that those assumptions were coming from a place of like judging what this would look like for the future. We have so much interaction, this person and I, not by choice, and not to say that I wouldn't necessarily choose to interact with her. Just like this is just kind of where we are in our organization. So in that moment, I really did believe, and I really did assume that it was better to just adjust to the situation. And even as I'm talking about it now, I'm realizing like that's probably not true. Those were kind of just untested beliefs. I haven't tested that. I hope that I don't ever have to test that in that
Yeah.
situation because it was pretty tragic. But I didn't know. I They were just beliefs that I had. I had in that moment.
Something that just keeps like sitting in the back of my head each section that we're going through is um that silence is compliance often. And
Oh
so
yeah.
we think if someone doesn't speak up that they agree with us. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's also that dynamic, right? Like if I don't voice that I have a different opinion, then are they assuming that I agree? But then also, if they didn't directly ask me my opinion, they could care less. Like maybe they don't
Right.
even care, and so there's just a lot of things to navigate
Yeah.
in this scenario, and it's a heightened situation, it's intense, your coworkers, like there's a lot of things to navigate here. So good
It's
job, because
complicated.
it is complicated. It is complicated, and I think it's nice to recognize like you can think about it months or years later and still learn from it and benefit
Mm-hmm.
from like evaluating things.
Agreed.
So, experiment. You said you haven't experimented on some of these things. So, was there anything that you actually did try to do?
In that moment,
Hmm.
uh, yes. I remember like pulling someone aside and talking to them about it and just being like, did I just hear what I heard? Right. And I think that was more of like getting a feeling for like if my assumption was that this wasn't the right time or the place to be
Yeah,
authentic, then even just being with someone and asking them like am I the only person who's shocked by this statement
right.
and maybe I should have said something. So I think that was my like tiny little experiment in that moment, just to kind of test out the waters and see if I was the only person and if it would have been okay. And of course, the feedback was, it's absolutely okay to share what it is that you need to say in those moments. And so that was really helpful to hear because
Yeah.
one, it made me feel like I wasn't alone in the way that I was feeling, so it made me feel validated. But it also validated my need to speak authentically. I guess is what I'm trying to say. That isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, I love that you went to a trusted person and kind of checked in for yourself with somebody else, because there are times when we're having an emotional response to something or something feels big and intense to us. Like it's important to check in with other people. Like, is this actually big and
Oh
intense?
yeah,
Or am I maybe like taking this a different way than intended? And to have that validation and encouragement that your voice is important and impactful is really supportive to have.
yeah, and I yeah, and I like to get feedback from people that I trust because I know that I can be crazy sometimes, or just that I could be blinded by my own biases. Right?
Right.
Again, this was a very political situation, and so I know that like my strong feelings and my biases towards this figure was could have blinded me in how I was showing up in a situation that required some delicacy. And so I did want to check in to make sure that like I wasn't being crazy.
Good job. Good job. Okay, so assessing the data, looking back at all of this and reflecting and observing it, hindsight, what did you learn from this situation?
Well, first of all, I learned that I don't need permission to communicate in ways that align with my values. I mean, I'm thinking too, I'm like, in this situation, if you got the audacity to say some of the things that you were saying, how do I not? I mean, where do I come from thinking that I don't get a chance or an opportunity to speak with things that align with not only my values but the values of the profession? Because we're at
Yeah,
work, right? So I don't need
right.
permission to share those or to talk about that. I think it would be helpful to take a beat, pause, and maybe choose my words a little bit more intentionally. Uh, and I learned that if I did that, that I could probably change how I was speaking and therefore change how I was feeling internally so that I felt more aligned with what was actually important to me. Because I know that for me, alignment, when I'm feeling aligned with the things that I'm saying or with how I'm moving through life, it feels really, really good to me. And I feel like I'm doing what I'm meant to do. And sometimes the environment might change and it might be a tense environment or it might be, a more relaxed environment. It might be a meeting, but it's still important to feel aligned with my values. And so, value consistent communication is like the practice that I want to continue to move forward in, like that internal practice, so that it becomes an external skill. Because I can't control other people's thoughts, feelings, behaviors, but I can certainly walk out of a room saying that felt like me.
So this is what value consistent communication actually looks like when it starts from the inside. So it's not about being perfect. I love Rose said practice. It's something she's going to practice. It's not about standing out. It's not about being out on the stage or in front of everybody.
It's not about
It
being right. I don't need, that's the other thing is like, I'm not concerned about being right in this situation,
yeah.
you know?
Yes, that's, I think, when you can really get to that point, when you really are congruent with your values and communicating in that way, it really isn't about being right. And that doesn't come forward in the way that we're communicating. So it's really just about being, not just, it's about being congruent, understanding what your values are and speaking from that place. Thank you so much for listening today, for joining us. And remember, speak clearly and listen bravely.
When you feel confident in your communication, everything changes.
We'd love to hear your wins, failures, and insights on Instagram at Communication Skills for Women. Leave a review and connect with us.
Until next time, speak clearly and listen bravely.